Mhm. Right. I shall share now.
Alan 可以 repeat 那个 video。Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Asia Hypnotherapy Forum. My name is Nick. I'm your host tonight. So let me just put up the slide for everyone. Now, just a very quick introduction to the Asia Hypnotherapy Forum. It is that the objective of Asia Hypnotherapy Forum is to bring the experts from worldwide, from overseas to Asia, to help the local and the Asian hypnotherapists to create more awareness and also understanding about this field. Now, tonight, we are very honored and we are very lucky to have Mr. Paul Aurand with us. And let me just give everyone a very quick introduction about Paul. Now, Paul is based in New York, but currently he's in Germany. He's an award-winning master hypnotherapist who has worked in the field for more than 30 years. Now, one interesting fact about Paul is that he survived being struck by lightning. Yes, you heard me right, huh? He survived being struck by lightning and had a transformative near-death experience that he had integrated into his essential healing workshops, which he presents internationally. Now, Paul served as the first elected president of the Michael Newton Institute and is Michael Newton Institute's Director of Education and a lead trainer. Now, he has been featured in documentary films and on television for his work with the groundbreaking Life Between Lives regression therapy. Now, Paul is also the author of Essential Healing, Hypnotherapy and regression-based practices to release the emotional pain and trauma keeping you stuck. Now, this is Paul's book. So if you're interested, you can actually look for it. Now, tonight, and Paul is going to present to us a very interesting title. And the top title is Essential Healing, hypnotherapy and regression-based practices to release the emotional pain and trauma keeping us stuck. Okay, now before we invite Paul for this, I would like to invite everyone to turn on their camera so that we can actually have a group photo tonight. Okay, so can everyone please turn on your camera so that we have a group photo?
Nick, can you remove this?
Yeah, so I'll, yeah, just hang on.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Be prepared. Smile in 3 seconds.
Okay.
I think so. We just, okay. One more time. Okay.
Okay, Ellie, done?
Okay. A few seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you everyone for keep smiling. Okay, now just allow me to run through the flow for tonight. Just 1 second. Okay, so tonight we will have Paul giving us his wonderful talk, and then right after the talk finish, right, we have about 30 minutes of Q&A. So if any one of you has any question, you know, that you want to direct to Paul, right, you can either type it in the chat box. Okay, then at the end of his talk, then we will let Paul answer those questions for you. Or if you prefer to ask Paul personally, then probably you have to wait until the Q&A and then you can ask Paul the questions. Okay, so this is the flow of tonight. So now let's get back to the talk. So now in this talk, Paul is going to talk about that deep within all of us resides a great spirit and a place of profound wisdom, creativity, power, and love. But the layers of hurt and the defenses have accumulated and diminished that spirit over time, obscuring what is magnificent about all of us. Now, Paul will share how to use essential healing for ourselves and also our clients. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Paul to share with us. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Let me just put Paul on the spotlight. Okay, so Paul, you're on. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Mang, and your team for providing this kind of education all around the world. It's so needed, and I think it's a really wonderful thing that you're doing, having people in that are well known in the field and are ready and willing to offer their help, their services to those that are learning to do it, those that are practicing professionally, and those that have interest in learning more about this kind of really amazing work that we do. Are you able to see, is everyone able to see my first slide in the PowerPoint? Is it showing?
You haven't shared yet, Paul. Probably you need to share it again.
Okay. Oh, I know why. You don't see it still? Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Sorry. Zoom, share screen. There you are. I see when the other one was shown, then I lost that, right? There. Got it?
It's coming up. Yep, got it.
There we go. PowerPoint is not my strong point, but it's a starting point. Okay. So you can see the cover of the book and some of the endorsements from some people that I really admire. Bruce Grayson is someone that's really known in the world of research for near-death experiences. And he has a new book out called After. So he's got 30 years of research with people's near-death experiences. Fascinating psychiatrist that works at the University of Virginia. Carolyn Meese, you probably all know about archetypes. She's been around a long time. really admired her work. And she wrote something for me too, as well as Larry Dossey, big guy in the field of consciousness. So I was really lucky to get his endorsement. And one from Raymond Moody. Do you all know Dr. Raymond Moody? He was the first medical doctor to research near-death experiences. So he was someone I really loved, and it was the first real spiritual book I read that talked about life after death from a medical perspective, from a scientific perspective. I think I read that when I was in high school. He really moved me. And to have him speak so kindly about my book was a dream come true. So I was practicing hypnotherapy in a very clinical setting, a doctor's office where I was doing pain management and working with patients with chronic illness since 1991. How about that? Seems like a long time ago now. And I was about 20 years ago, I was going to my son's swim meet. It was outdoor swim meet at a lake. And the swim meet was postponed because lifeguards heard thunder in the distance. And after about 20 minutes of waiting, everybody was impatient. And then again, way off in the distance, they heard the rumble of thunder. But it was sunny. There was no storm, no rain. And they postponed the meet again another 20 minutes. And so my young son, who was 3, was kind of antsy and wanted to leave. So I took him from the lake up to the car on the hill. And as I put him in the car and then was loading the beach chairs and coolers into the car, the entire world exploded. I didn't know that it was lightning at the time. All I knew was this blinding flash of white light. And you know how loud thunder can be? Imagine when it hits you, it's right there next to you, how loud that is. Just the loudest explosion. And then I didn't know why, but I began to be electrocuted. People could see it from a distance. I was standing rigid in the street, all the muscles in your body convulsed. And I don't know how long that lasted, but it lasted long enough for me to think a few things. One was, if this doesn't stop, I'm not going to survive. Another was, I'm being electrocuted, but I don't know where it's coming from. I couldn't really move, but I could move my eyes a bit and see there were power lines over my head. And I wondered if it was coming from them. And then it threw me, as it often does for someone that's been shocked that way. It threw me and they landed on my head on the street. Again, it was sunny, clear weather, but what I didn't know at the time is lightning can travel a great distance from cloud to the ground. And what had happened was that it hit a tree that I was standing next to. It traveled through the roots into an iron pipe, and it actually came out of the storm drain, the drain where the street water would run down. People saw the lightning come out of there. It hit my legs. It went up through my body. It came out of my body into the car. It melted the wiring in the car, and then a ball of lightning went off the front and knocked another person down. Now, I don't know how long it lasted. My guess is about 10 minutes because I was unconscious. And when I finally regained consciousness, I was in water that was 1/2 meter deep. It was pouring rain, there was hail, lightning everywhere. Phones didn't work, power was out. I don't know how long it took for that to happen, but as I regained consciousness, my body was still convulsing. I was paralyzed. I couldn't really move my arms and legs. I could scream, and I did a lot of that. My son, who's 25 now, still talks about being in the car when he was 3 and hearing that. That's his own trauma, right? It took 45 minutes for the ambulances to come because the trees had blocked the road. They couldn't get there. And so they finally arrived. They got me to a hospital. Now, they don't really know what to do with you at a hospital when you've been electrocuted like that, because most people don't survive it. So then you're kind of a guinea pig. They did a bunch of tests on me. And after a few hours, released me, didn't even tell me not to drive. Can you imagine? Yeah. So friends took me to the car. The car was burnt out from the lightning, so they took me home. Good thing, because there's no way I should have been driving. And the next day, I felt like I'd been run over by hundreds of dump trucks. I can't tell you every bone, muscle. Billy probably knows what that feels like from what he just had, but everything hurt. And I was delirious. I was afraid to turn on the light switch. I was afraid to touch the refrigerator. Anything that had electricity, I had this irrational fear from. And the biggest problem really for me was short-term memory. I had no short-term memory. I couldn't remember one thing from 1 minute to the next. I pulled into a gas station with my son in the car to put fuel in the car, and he looked at me and, like teenagers do sometimes, and, "What are you doing, Dad?" And I said, "I have to put gas in the car." He said, "You just put gas in the car." "No, that's not possible. The gauge is on full." I had just filled the car up and had completely forgotten. Imagine trying to do your practice like that, right? So I couldn't practice for almost 6 months. It just didn't work. Plus, I was in so much pain, and there was some internal damage we weren't aware of from the lightning. And I had a surgery that repaired that, but I was still struggling. And then there was a pretty well-known hypnotherapist from California. His name is David Quigley, who I had on my schedule for my center to come and present a lecture and a workshop on something he calls somatic healing. It's a kind of regression that goes through the body. It's regressing on feelings, really. I teach that in the regression course that I run each year. And so he used me as his demonstration for that workshop, because he saw how much I was struggling. And what he did is he had me lay down on this futon, on a pad on the floor. And he took me back to a few moments before the lightning strike. And then he took me through the experience in a very associated way. Now, there's a lot of difference of opinion in the regression world about to regress someone associated so that they fully re-experience it, or to regress them dissociated so they can observe it but not re-experience it, right? So I think it's a good discussion to have. My preference is to regress somewhat dissociated, unless there's something of value that's really of benefit, a very special good feeling, then I'll have them associated. But usually I have them more as the objective observer. But his style was to have you be in it. And so as he took me through it, in the very beginning, my feet began to move, as they had when I was being electrocuted. And then my legs began to move until my whole body was bouncing and thumping on the floor. Very dramatic. Not something you necessarily want to have in your clinic, in your office, but that was his approach to it. And the idea was to go back to have me re-experience that, to release the trauma. And then he said what I would call the magic words. He said, "Welcome the lightning." Now, that's very counterintuitive. When that lightning was in my body, I knew it was killing me. And I fought with all my being. I said, "No," right? And it was in the resistance of it, in the fighting back against this force much greater than me, that it became lodged in my body. The trauma became lodged in my body. And so what the regression therapist did then was have me welcome it so it could pass through my body to really release it. And as he did that, that's when my own personal memories about my near-death experience came. Many people have their near-death memories right after the experience. Mine were buried, and this is true for many. I did a research project with 20 sudden cardiac arrest patients. There's a cardiologist up in Canada that rounded up 20 of his patients who had all had their hearts stop for various reasons. And they were all resuscitated with a defibrillator. They were shocked back to life. And there were various lengths of time between those 20 patients for how long they were dead. There's no brain activity. There's no heart activity. The shortest was about 2 minutes because he was actually coming to the hospital because of a heart problem. And the longest was actually over 1 hour. Now you say, how could someone be dead for over an hour and be revived? This woman was very lucky. She was traveling with a group of physicians and nurses in the wilderness on a wilderness camping trip. And so they did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and they did chest compressions for over an hour until they could get her to a place where they could get a phone signal and get an ambulance and get her into a hospital where she could be defibrillated in the ambulance, really. She was in coma for weeks, and she can tell you great detail about what was happening while she was in coma. She can tell you great detail about what was happening while they were doing chest compressions and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. So what we found in this pilot research project with 20 sudden cardiac arrest patients is that the brain and the heart, the body may be clinically dead, but consciousness survives. The individual is still conscious, not in their body. So most of the others that I regressed were minors in northern Canada. And as they cried during the regression, they described being outside of their body and watching people rush to them, calling ambulance coming, the emergency technicians coming, getting out equipment that they'd never seen, describing them the procedure that they used to resuscitate them to get their heart going again. They described things in rooms in hospitals they were never in. They could describe furniture, they could describe carpet, they could describe conversations that were going on while they were quote unquote dead. So that near-death regression research, I think, very scientifically shows us that consciousness does continue, that there is life after death. And so my own personal near-death experience, for me, when I saw my body there dead in the street as the water was rushing over it and the storm was happening, I felt no pain. I felt no fear. And I'll talk about life between life regression, but maybe some of you know about it. But there are so many parallels between what someone who experiences a near-death experience reports and what someone who has a life between life regression session reports. So I moved away from my body very quickly, and I went to this place that is a little hard to describe. It's almost like something out of a Hollywood movie. So at first, during the regression, I didn't trust it completely because it seemed too cliche, seemed too perfect. All we needed was Meryl Streep or some other famous actress there, and it would have been perfect. But I felt at home. I felt completely and totally loved. And so this love that many report during their near-death experience or life between life regression is one of the main features of it, I think. Don't we all want to know? Don't we all want to experience? And don't we all want to exude unconditional love, right? But how often here on this planet are you able to experience that? And even though I had the experience, and even though it's not a theory, it's something I've really fully experienced, it's something I carry in my being, but even so, I'm not able to exude that all of the time. I think it's made me a more loving person, and it makes me know that that exists. It makes it easier for me to see it in other people. And I think, honestly, a lot of the work that we do is helping people bring that out from within themselves, right? So feeling unconditionally loved, I think, is one of the things that most of us long for, and that someone who has this kind of near-death experience often experiences. So you have first the realization that even though my body's dead, I'm still alive. I have a soul, or whatever you want to call it. Scientists call it non-local consciousness. How about that for a term? Because they're afraid to say the word soul because it's associated with religion, right? So they avoid it by calling it non-local consciousness. Well, non-local consciousness is a really amazing thing. I call it expanded consciousness. So it took me a while to put the two together, but I realized, what are we doing with hypnosis? When we hypnotize someone, we're not putting them to sleep. We're not making them unconscious. We're actually helping that rational, analytical, mental mind step back, which frees then the subconscious mind, where all the memories are stored, and feelings. And once those memories and feelings come, then the super consciousness comes. Then the soul consciousness comes. Then the spiritual consciousness comes. That's what I call expanded consciousness. You probably all know the book by Dr. Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon who wrote a book called Proof of Heaven. So Eben was a dyed-in-the-wool, atheistic, materialistic scientist who died in the hospital from a neurological disease. And he said it was one of the best things that ever happened to him because he was completely free from his mental mind. And his consciousness expanded unimaginably. And he talks about the layers of consciousness that he goes through and meeting the source of all things. And Eben struggled after that experience. He wrote an amazing book. I really recommend it, Proof of Heaven. But he struggled to reattain that state again, that immensely expanded state of consciousness. He played with meditation, he played with sound. I actually had the opportunity to regress him back to that experience. And finally, he reconnected with that truly unbelievable expanded state of consciousness. I've never seen anyone in such a state in any of the sessions that I've conducted. He'd already had that experience, and so getting back there was easier for him, right? But that's one of the features of a near-death experience. It's one of the features of a spiritually transformative experience. It's one of the features of a life between life regression, is consciousness expanded beyond the limits of the mental mind. And we have the best tool to do it for people, I believe, with hypnotherapy. Now, another thing that occurred while I was there was a very brief life review. Some people have them in much more detail. The part that I remembered during Quigley's work with me was, I've been doing this work for a pretty long time, right? I started when I was 20. So that was at least 10, 15 years ago. Billy's laughing. Yeah. Anyway, one of the things I experienced there was I didn't see people lined up as often people do, but I felt, I'm a much more feeling person, right? I'm not so visual when I'm in sessions. That was trouble for me when I first started being regressed because the screen is blank and it seemed like nothing's happening. So I had to learn to trust what I was feeling, sensing, and knowing. And that was more subtle. And I had the kind of mind that would just say, nah, that can't be, no, that can't be, just kind of discounting things. So I had to find that trust, and then it became much more clear, much more clear and much more detailed. But while I was out of body in expanded state, I felt the deep love and appreciation for all those people whose lives I'd touched during sessions, because I've been doing this work for a long time. And it wasn't that I saw them one by one saying thank you or something, but it was an amazing feeling. You know, you help people every day, right, doing this work? And then you often have no more contact with them. Sometimes you don't even know if they got the result they wanted. Right? But to feel all of them kind of present in a way and showering this love and appreciation, that was a real reward. That was something that is unforgettable, very special about that experience. And then in that spiritual state, out of body and separate from mental mind, I had one of the most profound experiences I've had in my life or my afterlife. And that was what I believe a core wound that we all carry, is a sense of separation, that I'm different than you. And along with that comes, I'm not enough, or I'm good enough, or there's something wrong with me. And also a sense of aloneness, that there's this, I think you must see it in your sessions, that people feel separate from and alone, apart from and alone. And while I was there, I was given the experience of being in that universal sea of consciousness, having an awareness of myself in that universal sea of consciousness, but not feeling separate from it at all, but knowing myself as all things simultaneously, of knowing of myself. So it wasn't just that I felt one with everything, I was experiencing being all things. That's mind-blowing. And that changes your perspective on yourself, and that changes your perspective on others and on the world. When you know you're all one, it's much harder to do harm. It's much easier to love others and yourself. And it helps quell that deep sense of loneliness or sadness or separateness that I think many of the people who sit in your chair, and many of us sitting here today, know all too well. So that helps cure that, to remember, and it helps you change who you are and how you behave, for sure. The other thing that happened while I was there that I was able to recover during this regression, 6 months after the lightning strike, were some of the messages that I received while I was there from my guide or guides. And I would say that the one that is most important for me to share, most significant for me, was a relatively simple message, which was listen, listen, listen. And then they went into more detail for me and said, you have a pretty good mind, mental mind, but you use it way too much. You depend on it too much. You need to learn to listen. Listen to your heart. Listen to your soul. Listen to us. Listen to your guides. Listen to spirit, right? So it was a little bit of a admonishment. It was a strong encouragement to listen. And listening really became a theme for me. I think when I first learned hypnotherapy, I was taught to talk. I was taught to say a lot of things. I thought I had to fill the entire time of the session with me talking. And it was after this message, I began to listen. And when I train hypnotherapists, when I train regression therapists, it's the first thing I teach them to do is listen. Listen to what your client is telling you. They will give you all the answers. They'll give you all the stuff that you need in order to formulate that session. And I'd spent so much time talking, I wasn't listening, right? So it doesn't just mean listening to other people, but it meant learning how to listen to my heart. Well, I was pretty good at listening to my heart. I wasn't very good at listening to my body, and I had no clue how to listen to my soul or to my guides. As a matter of fact, when I began my inner work to listen to my soul, you know what happened? My mind said, no, you better not do that. Bad things will happen. My mind was really afraid of losing control. My mind that had worked for 40 years to keep me safe and keep me going, keep all the balls in the air, make sure everything happened right, said, no, no, no. If you go down that path of listening to spirit and your soul, everything's going to fall apart. What it really meant was, I'm going to lose control. You know? And so I learned to dialogue with my mind. We're going to do a workshop for IACT Galaxy. What is it, in about a week or two? And one of the things I'm going to talk about is conscious interference. And I think in the work that we do, especially this more spiritual work, that conscious interference is one of the biggest challenges we run into. And I don't like to use the word resistance, you know? Resistance to me, it sounds like a blame on the client. They paid their money, they're sitting in the chair, they came to their appointment, they're trying, they're struggling, but something's getting in the way. And I don't think it's really resistance. I think it's conscious interference. And conscious interference isn't a problem unless we don't recognize it. And conscious interference isn't a problem unless we try to override it. You know, if you try to make the mental mind go away, if you try to make the mental mind shut up and stop, it just, as you probably know, it just digs its heels in. It becomes worse. It becomes more anxious. It becomes more worried. So I've developed a method, and you can, it's on my YouTube channel. There's a 2-hour workshop that I did for the Newton Institute on conscious interference. It's free. Take a look at it. It has all the techniques in there that I use. Just look up Paul Aurand on YouTube and you'll find it. Excuse me. So I dialogue with my mind. What's your concern? It's like, it's a form of parts therapy, really. What's your concern? Oh, if you do this, something bad will happen. What bad will happen? You'll go off the rails. You'll be misguided. Conscious mind, thank you. You do a really good job in my everyday life. You keep things together. You know, you keep me going. You help me be a success. You keep me safe, really, is what it needed to hear. Thank you for keeping me safe for all these years. And then guess what happened? It went, okay, okay, okay. And then I could do the soul work. I could start to connect with my soul. I could start to learn to listen to my heart and listen to my soul. So one of the themes in essential healing is listening to your soul. There's a big movement all around the world for a good amount of time now. Listen to your heart, right? I disagree. Listening to your heart's important, but it's a first step. It's not the ultimate destination. You do need to listen to your heart, but the heart will misguide you as well. How many times have you listened to your heart, you know, and you did something that, yeah, maybe wasn't the wisest thing to do? So listen to the heart, process the feelings, process the emotions that you hold in your heart. But remember that the heart is the doorway to your inner world. It's how you get in. You don't get in through the head. You get in through the heart. So it's not the ultimate destination, but it's the way to get in. And once you go through the heart and some of the feelings that you stored there, and you go deeper within, that's where you'll find the real wisdom. That's where you'll find your soul essence, the core self, the authentic you, whatever name you want to give it. But there's something deep within each of us that's full of great wisdom. And I believe, as a hypnotherapist, that's my ultimate duty, responsibility, work, purpose, is not to put a bunch of stuff in people, but to help them find what's alive and well and full of love and wisdom and truth and power within them. So, as I finished that regression and processed my own trauma, that set me on my search. I really wanted to know, how could I conduct a session for someone so that they could reconnect with their own self, their soul essence, and their guides, and experience unconditional love and oneness, and get wisdom from within. And I wasn't sure how to do it. So body wisdom is something that came out of that search. I was doing pain management, hypnoanesthesia, anesthetizing people's pain. But it felt like it was just symptomatic treatment. It was effective to a certain extent, but they were back for more sessions to anesthetize their pain. And anesthetizing pain can get someone relief, but it wasn't real healing. We weren't going to the source. And so with the theme of listening, I took a reverse approach. Instead of having them numb the pain from their migraine or their knee or their back or their heartache, because it was emotional pain as well, obviously, I had people begin to dialogue with it. I took parts therapy and I adapted it to the body. And if they had liver cancer, or if they had a spine problem, if they had chronic migraines, instead of trying to make the migraine go away, I taught them to enter into a relationship with it. So they could ask their migraine, what's your message for me? What is it you're trying to show me or tell me? And as long as they weren't coming from their intellectual mind, again, that was the biggest challenge, but connected to their body's wisdom, they would get the most profound answers that could resolve their problem in many, many cases, right? So that's something I developed. I have a manual on it, video on it on YouTube. So this came out of my search. And then ultimately, what happened during body wisdom is that some people spontaneously regressed to past life. I had no training in it. I didn't know how to conduct it. This is the same thing happened to Michael Newton, right? I had a school teacher she didn't believe in reincarnation. It wasn't her frame of reference. She had a 7-year chronic shoulder problem that I was attempting to do a dialogue with. And she spontaneously regressed to being a slave in the United States in the South, where she's stealing food because there wasn't enough food for her and her son. She's stealing food from the master, and she's caught and she's beaten to death. And in the process, he stomps on her shoulder and crushes it. Pretty brutal, cruel stuff, isn't it? People do past life regression because they think it's going to be fun and they're curious, and then they go back to source of trauma. But so she came out of this session, not an intentional past life regression. My eyes must have been this big. And she was like, what was that? But she had no more shoulder pain. And that shoulder pain that was chronic for 7 years was resolved from that session. Now, was it imagination? Was it fantasy? Was it psychosis? I didn't know. But from my perspective, well, her shoulder's better, nothing else worked, surgery, nothing worked. Okay, I don't know what it was, but good. And then it happened 2, 3, 4 more times over the course of another year. I said, no, there's something to this. I need to learn this. I need to study this. And then I studied past life regression, and that was better. You know, I was getting closer, but there was still something, there was still something missing. Sorry. And then it was in 2001 where I was invited to assist Michael Newton. I'd read Journey of Souls, but I hadn't connected it with the work I was doing somehow. 2001, he needed people to assist at the first training he was going to do in Life Between Lives regression. And so he did a little pre-training for us. I still have the recording on a cassette tape, Ming. How about that from Michael? Remember cassette tapes? Or they before your time? Anyway, and I went down to that training in Virginia Beach, and I watched Michael Newton do the one and only live Life Between Life regression demonstration. Right, so he had 50, 60 people in a room with not very friendly fluorescent lights and big hall, but he regressed this woman and he got her into spirit. And I said, you know, he's figured out how to do it. He's learned how to get people into spirit, into the afterlife without the trauma, without the dying part that I experienced. He really found the way. Did you want to say something, May?
No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
Carry on, carry on.
Okay. So he found the way. And so I finished that training with him and I never looked back. Since that day, that's what I've been doing. I do the clinical cases too, and I love them, but primarily past life and life between life regression, taking people into spirit so that they can remember themselves as the immortal soul they are, so that they can experience unconditional love and get answers for healing in their lives and the lives of others. And it's the most amazing and beautiful work. If you have a chance to study it, read about it, I really encourage you. We have a course coming up in December for Asia and China, and I'm sure we'll be running that again because I think that one's full, isn't it?
Yeah, it's full.
Yeah, so we'll schedule another one. It'd be so great to have this work go more places. So I found that, I practiced that for a long time, and I've been practicing that full time since 2001. So what is that now? 20 years? Yeah. So I've done a few thousand of them, and it's been such a learning for me because sitting in that energy and hearing the wisdom that's conveyed to people when they're in that state is tremendously moving and transformative for me too, as the facilitator, right? So what I did was I took some of the main elements or features, some of the main experiences that people were having in LBL, and looking at what it was that was holding people back from being able to get there. So Michael doesn't write in his amazing books about the cases where people struggled, the cases that where people were blocked or unable to get there. And so my book's intention is really to prepare people for that kind of session. So it really takes you from the ground floor. Yeah. So there's 9 chapters in the book. The book has 50 practices in it. Practices that you can use for yourself, but practices that you can very easily apply to your sessions. So these are things I learned to do in sessions, working to get people into spirit. And I've put it all down there. It's there for you to use. And that's why I wrote it, is so that it would be available for you to use it, so that people can do this on their own. And so the very first part of the book focuses on getting out of the mind, because that's the first step in all of this work. It's not cognitive work. It's not analytical work. When I work with people that have been chronically ill for 10, 15 years, they've thought a lot about it. And thinking about it didn't solve it. So they need to get out of their thinking mental mind and be free of the limitations of it. That's our job as a hypnotherapist. And so this is really a form of self-hypnosis, teaching them and helping them practice to get out of that state. Imagine you have a client that comes in to see you that knows how to do this, that knows how to get out of their mind. Your job's so much easier, right? So once they're out of their mind, then the next thing is to go into the heart. That's really most of my inductions. I do safe place imagery and progressive relaxation too, but this is my focus, getting them out of mind, having them dialogue with their mind, having them observe their mind. Once the client observes their mind, then their consciousness is already expanding. They're no longer locked in by it. And then I move them into their heart. Now, as we go into the heart, a number of things happen. Most of us have some form of heart protection that became necessary from different kinds of hurts, wounds, trauma. when the world didn't seem safe, when mom or dad or teacher or brother or sister or someone yelled at you or put you down, you started to build a membrane, you started to build a wall, you started to build protection because it hurt, right? So one of the first things that we do in opening the heart is explore this heart protection. What is it that stands guard at the doorway there? What is it that ensures that already wounded heart won't be wounded again? One of the big problems with substantial heart protection is that when love does come our way, it can't get in. That heart protection deflects it. And substantial heart protection also tends to hold in the old wounds from the past. And I think that's what we work with often in hypnosis sessions, right? Is the pain that people carry and finding a way for them to express it or release it. So entering the heart, working with the heart protection, and then the next step usually that I find myself doing, and as you know from your work, it doesn't always go in this order, but these are some of the main pieces, right? So once heart's open, then we run into the emotions that are stored. I call these the big three. I think in regression therapy, this is primarily what we're looking for. What are the stored emotions that are influencing and affecting you, right? What are the beliefs you've formed from those emotional experiences? We all carry these limiting beliefs, and they start early. I'm not enough. It's my fault. The world's cruel. On and on and on and on. And that's what we're working to resolve with hypnosis, isn't it? These beliefs. And they live in the subconscious mind. But guess what? They live in the soul, not just the subconscious mind. They're in the body, they're in the subconscious mind, and they're in the soul. When you do something in a past life and you're blamed and punished and killed for it, guess what? Your soul brings some of that past life imprint into this life, and you don't know why. You're afraid of speaking your truth, but something inside says, oh no, don't do that. Something bad will happen. And then you don't speak up, right? So these beliefs are carried through lifetimes by the soul. It's something that's missing in traditional psychology. It's why psychotherapists get so frustrated, because it's in the soul, it's not in the psyche. It's not in the human personality makeup. It's deeper. And that's something that we can work with. It's something that we can help resolve. And the third one is survival strategies. So what did you learn to do to stay safe and to get love? We all learn different things. In my family, I learned to be good. I learned to don't stress out your parents. And I learned to be responsible, caretaker. That was how I thought, that is how I believed I could get love and acceptance, was to be the caretaker. And I spent lifetimes sacrificing myself, putting myself last, taking care of other people. And I started out this way in this life too. It's something I've had to resolve in this life, right? So we all have these survival strategies, and they really cause trouble, right? If you know you're looking for one of those or all three of those things when you regress someone, it'll make your job so much easier. You won't get caught in the story. You can go right to the root cause of these things. So in the book, we work with these emotions, beliefs, and survival strategies. And then as you go deeper through these are sort of in layers, I would say, encasing that soul essence or authentic self. Then there are a few specific aspects that will often come forward that you'll have to do some work with. One is the inner child, and there are primarily two versions of that that you'll end up working with. One is the wounded child, the one that's been neglected or hurt in some way, that needs love, needs protection, needs healing. But there's also the wonder child. And I love when a client is able to connect with their wonder child. The wonder child is the intact form of the child self, very close to the authentic self, the soul essence. It's playful, spontaneous, curious, creative, often very brave. It's a great resource for the person. And it's very transformative when they can reconnect with that one. So there are a lot of techniques in the book, as well as how to work with both the wounded child, how to do interventions for loving and protecting, as well as how to begin to connect with the inner wisdom within the individual that lies within the wonder child, right? Now, as you begin this work of the beliefs and the emotions and the survival strategies and inner child, there are other parts that will often come forward. There are some archetypes really that I think that we all need to deal with. And one very common one is the inner critic, right? We all have an inner voice that says, you could have prepared more for that presentation, or, you pushed the wrong button, or, it wants us to do our best, but it's constantly wearing us down, really. It erodes self-esteem, and it ends up causing the very problems it's there to prevent. When you can work with somebody who has a very loud, a very strong inner critic, and have that inner critic become their inner advocate, have that inner critic back off and not hammer them all the time, maybe even catch them doing something good, big change, big move forward. Another archetype that we work with is the protector. It's that one that says, oh no, I got hurt doing that too many times, I'm not doing it again. And then you end up living alone or sad or unfulfilled. So the protector is another important part. There are many, but these are two of the archetypes or parts that you'll run into as you go towards the core self, right? I'm working with someone right now, and the archetype or part that we're working with is, I'm bad. I'm bad. My father told me I'm bad. I did bad things. I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. And she's a very religious person. And so what should happen when you're bad? You should be punished, right? You should suffer. And she wonders why she suffered so much in her life. And she just finally talked to this part that's bad, said, no, you deserve to suffer. You're so bad. I should suffer. My life should be full of suffering. And it keeps, every time she tries to start a project, she sabotages it because she's bad and she deserves to suffer. So it's these parts that we need to work with, that live within us, that we'll often bump into before we connect with the soul self. Yeah. And from this part of the book, this is chapter 6, Ancestral Healing, we start to delve more into the spiritual aspects of our being. And I think in Asia, I lived in Japan for 2 years. I learned the language. I learned some about the culture, enough to know that I don't know enough. But one of the things that really moved me living there was that where I came from in the United States, most of us came from families who left their homes, right? They left Europe and they came to the United States, pioneers, started this country that's about 200 years old. It's a baby. We left everything behind, including our ancestors. When I asked my grandfather about our ancestry, his answer was, we're Americans, period. In Japan, before we had dinner, there was a little shrine where we put food. We said a prayer before we ate our meal. We honored our ancestors. We honored those who gave us life. Right? I think that's a really important thing to do. There's a lot that we inherit from our ancestors that we don't know. And there are things we inherit from our ancestral lineage that needs to be resolved. And what I love about ancestral healing is that when I have a client in the chair and I'm working with them on something that they carry from their ancestors that's causing harm, fear, anger, whatever it might be, certain beliefs, there's not enough. I have them return it to the one they got it from, their mother, their father, their grandfather, the grandmother, not to cause them harm, but to return it to source and to tell them, to tell the ancestor, you received this violence that you've passed on to me, that I've passed on to my children. You can return it to whoever you got it from. And so there's a client described it so beautifully a couple of days ago. She said, I'm giving back this murderous rage that's my father exhibited and that I exhibit to my children. I'm giving it back to my grandfather, my father. He doesn't really want it, but he accepts it and he gives it back to his father, and his father gives it back to his father. And so you're solving it at source, and you're not healing one person, but you're healing a whole family lineage. She said, it seems like dominoes. They're going, it's going back, boop, 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 right? So you have an opportunity to healing with more than one person when you do ancestral healing. I think it's not just beneficial for the client, but for the entire planet, right? And the other side of this returning is that we can receive what's beneficial from them. They knew something, you know? We wouldn't be alive without them. And so let's welcome and accept that. And I think it's such a missing aspect in the Western world that it needs to be introduced and worked with. Yeah. So once we clear up some of these external layers and start to reach deeper within, especially with the inner child self is very close to our authentic self and can often assist us in making that dive even deeper within to connect with the wise one within. And so I love it when I can have someone in my chair and guide them out of their mind into their heart and go all the way deep inside. They're not looking outside to their guru or their doctor or their parent or their spouse, but they're going in. And they find the wise woman, the wise man, the wise one within. They learn how to begin to listen to their inner wisdom. That is so empowering. This woman that I said her theme was I'm bad. Imagine how she transformed when she found something within her that was powerful. Power was a bad word for her. Power was mean, cruel, hurtful, violent. That was her experience of it in her family. She found a beautiful, sensuous, powerful woman within herself that at first she was afraid of. But then when she connected to, realized it wasn't scary, it wasn't mean, it was unconditionally loving and full of great wisdom and power that she'd learned to give up, right? It was unsafe for her to be a woman. It was unsafe for her to be a powerful woman. And she reconnected with her power. And she got great guidance, not from me, not from a sage, not from anyone else external, but from her own inner wisdom. And so it creates a much more confident, self-reliant, and awakened being when they can learn to turn inward and listen to that inner voice. And once someone makes that connection, then they can take the next step, I think, to listen to their guides. Once they listen to their own inner wisdom, their own soul essence, that core self, really reconnect with that. There's a process, you know, once they reconnect with the soul essence, that it begins to emerge, it begins to come forward, it begins to wake up and break through those crusty layers. It can do the healing from within, and I love that. It isn't dig, dig, dig for the next 7 years. It's reconnect with this and let that come forward and shine. And when that comes forward and shines, that person begins to recognize it in other people as well. That's when they can turn to their guides, I believe. and get guidance from even beyond their own soul wisdom. Because souls have some misunderstandings as well. And so that's my choice of pathway, if you will, to ultimately have them connect then with their guides. Let's see. In the back of the book are some practice guides. So if there's a certain condition a person has, you can take a look at what that is and then see which practice would be ultimately most useful for that. I think I used my hour time you've allotted for me. Nick, we okay for time?
Please go on.
We have a choice. I can take you through a short practice from the book, or I can take your questions. Did people post questions while I was blah, blah, blah?
Yes, but can you take both?
Yeah, do some practice, Paul.
Okay. Everybody up for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll keep it short just so you can have the experience of it, all right? 1 second. Okay. So when you're ready, unless you're driving or doing something that requires eyes open, I'd like to have you close your eyes and just take a couple of centering breaths. The breath is amazing because it's something that's happening right here, right now. It brings you into the present moment. And mental mind is not so good at being in the present moment. It tends to dwell in the past or the future. So just bring yourself into the present moment by taking a few breaths. Feeling your breath go in and out. That's right. Good. And then you just want to begin to observe your thoughts. Just notice what it is that you hear your mind saying. And there's generally one of three things that will happen when you do this. It will be quiet, pleasantly, surprisingly quiet. It may have a concern, maybe going down its grocery list, or here's a noise or something in the room or body position. And if that's a concern that you can address or deal with or resolve, then do that. Or it may be encouraging you. You can do this. This is great. So just notice what it's saying to you. And then you want to breathe and bring your attention to the center of your chest, your heart center. And it can be helpful to even place your hand there. You don't have to, but you might place your hand on the center of your chest, your heart center, and breathe and feel into it. And as you do that, you want to invite this heart to open. For that's really the doorway to your inner world. And as you attempt to open your heart, you might notice that there's some protection over it. And if there's protection around your heart, just notice the size, shape, color, texture. If that protection was an object, what would it be? Now, if you have some protection there and you've explored it as an object, the first thing that you want to do is thank it. You want to thank it for keeping you safe, for doing its best. Just acknowledge it and thank it. That's right. And you may notice that that protection softens or transforms as you thank it. And then you want to find a way in, around or through that protection. You don't have to let anyone else in, but you can go in to the protection that lies beneath that, to the heart that lies beneath that protection. And as you go into your heart center, not the organ, but the heart center, you'll notice that there are some feelings, some emotions that will come up. And just notice what feelings you hold in your heart. The heart can hold many. Love, pain, warmth. Breathe into those feelings. Just let them come and let them go. That's right. And now continue your dive deeper within, almost like an arrow, piercing through all of the layers, the crusty layers that have accumulated, towards the very core of your being. Go past the protections, go past the things that were said or done to you, deeper and deeper within. Even past the things that you came to believe of yourself, deeper and deeper within. To that place within of great wisdom, all the way to the wise one within, something far beyond your intellect. However he or she might appear, allow yourself now to make contact with the wise one within. And notice how it feels to be in their presence. And if for some reason you haven't quite gotten there, just notice what it is that holds you back or what gets in the way, and that's the next work to do. But tell that wise one that you're coming. Invite that wise one to come forward. And the wise one within has a message for you, something it wants to show you or tell you. Just be open to what it is that your wise one wants to show you or tell you. Now, sometimes the wise one within has a gift for us. It can be a tool, an object, a symbol. It can be words of wisdom. Just be open to it if your wise one within has a gift for you. If you're unsure what the gift is for, you can ask. And if there's a question, something you've been wondering about, you might take a few moments to ask that of the wise one. That's right. And remembering how you got there. Observing mind, opening heart, and diving within. You can do this for you over and over again. You can do this for your clients over and over again. And if for some reason you got stuck along the way, just make note of what it was that got in the way and know that that's the place to do some work. And then gently and gradually feel your feet on the floor. The chair or cushion beneath you. Grounding, connecting, letting your eyes come open. All the way back to your natural waking state. That's good. And then before we take the questions that were submitted, is there anyone that wants to share what happened when you connected with your wise one?
I will. Billy. It went
Okay,
real
Billy.
quickly. Yes, I had Nick. I went real quickly past any kind of barriers or protections. Although it started off as this kind of blue orb that was cold, but it was just there as a bouncer.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much saying no, but just
Mhm.
assessing what was coming my way. But it was
Mhm.
easy to go past that and get to this white lotus heart,
Mm,
which was the real me.
love it.
And as I got there, and you said, could go in deeper to connect with higher self, higher oneness with spirit. It turned into just all this light, incredible light of who I really am. And then kind of a Vedic figure of, Brahma or Vishnu or Shiva. Hold in your heart that image that who we are, who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And because from that comes strength, centeredness, which is then you can transfer out to others. And that's what we're all here for. Not just to fill ourselves and to take care of ourselves, but to really spread that from the heart, to usher that, let that flow from the heart to others. So this is the first time I've done self-hypnosis that I know of in the past 30 days. And I'm so happy to do it. And so
Beautiful.
Thank you, Paul.
Great. Thank you. Good. Okay, Nick, do you want to, should we do the questions?
Yeah, before that, I see that Ram is putting his hand up. Ram, would you like, do you want to share your experience or you have a question?
You have to unmute yourself and then I'd be glad to hear what you want to say.
Yeah, Ram, you have to unmute yourself.
There you
Paul,
go.
this is Ram Man and I'm in Luxembourg at the moment. I tried to go with you, what you were saying, but I was just, hitting a blank, a total blank. And I have tried several times to do this, and Dr. Teo knows about this. I seem to have something what you call a fantasia. I believe you have the same thing because you're not visual. That's what you said. How do I overcome that?
In those cases, most often it's easier to go through the body. So through off physical sensation. So if I work with you, or if Dr. Teo worked with you, he'd probably have you put your hand on your chest and go with the feelings and the physical sensations.
Right.
And then maybe some trauma or memory, something will come, or you'll go.
Yeah, because right now it was just blank,
Yeah.
Didn't get
That's not
any feeling
uncommon.
at all.
Not uncommon. That's, I would say, go through the body.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think before we go to the questions, Paul, I'd like to share mine. So just now, as you were guiding us, the process for me is kind of interesting because every time when we reach a layer, right, it's not hard to open up that layer. For example, the first layer is I see a flower, okay, but hasn't really opened up yet, and then there's like a chain, holding, right? And I just have to say that now, just let go, and I want to go in, and it just it's not there's not much resistance, but it just disappear, and then it start to open up, right? Then the flower open up, then I can dive in. I dive in, go in. It's like a tunnel, something like that, and there's some chamber within. And then, as you say that, now go even deeper, and then it's like I have to squeeze in, the pathway, and it's like it's so tight. And I'll say that I want to go in, just widen up, and it widens at that instant. It just widens, and then you just continue to go in, and then every time it becomes narrow, you said, let me go in, then it just open up again. I don't know. It's like, I don't know whether that is how it's supposed to be, but then at the final one, as you say, the core, it's like a round chamber inside, and there's something inside, but at that point of time, it just got, it's not like what Ram said, totally blank. It's like you are not able to connect. Like it's like sort of like everything becomes like before it was you can feel it, but at that point of time it just become it could become blur, as if like there's a barrier between you and that part, and sort of like your concentration start to go off. And it's that's what happened.
Just go back to it again, or work with one of us to do it personally.
Because
it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means there's some belief or something that needs to be resolved so that you can.
It's kind of a familiar feeling that I did a session with Dr. Teo before, the LBL session. It's like you're there, but you cannot go further. That you're there, but you're not able to go further.
So I would use that as a theme. You're there, but can't go further. And then that comes from somewhere, right? Especially if that's a kind of a pattern. So you work with that, and then you'll get there.
I see.
Yeah. One of the first times I did this with someone, as she approached it, she said, "Oh, it looks like a devil. It has red eyes, and it looks evil." She was so afraid. I said, no one's soul essence is evil. And so, but she was shocked. And so that was the thing to work with. And that was her self-belief. That was the thing her father had told her she was since she was a little girl. Bad, evil, horrible, And that was her self-image. And it was so healing for her to finally give that back to Dad, and then find out she was this amazing being. Right? It's not exactly the same for you, but that's what happens is you get very close and then you bump into something that needs to be resolved.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
All right. Thanks for sharing your point of view as well. Okay, so now Paul, are you ready for the questions? Okay. Now I got the first question from Billy. Right? Shall I read it out, Billy? Yep. Okay. So Billy mentioned that he was struck by lightning, but not in this life, and his was in a past life, and where he was cowboying a herd of cattle along the Chisholm Trail in central US. That was his past life memory. And his question is, in essential healing, how best to help others release the trauma from past lives?
And more specifically, Paul, is the idea that just explaining some of the mechanics of how, when we go back into a past life regression, an exploration, and reveal a trauma that soul carried forth, some of the mechanics of how it happens, that we're able just to connect with it and it gets released, much like the woman you talked about getting the crushed shoulder as a slave, that just by visiting it with the awake awareness of soul and subconscious, that it just releases. And some of the mechanics, it's like always been like, it amazes me how much we can release and don't have to really think about it. It's automatic. It just happens. So there we go.
Yeah, it was one of the quandaries, one of the things I struggled with in writing the book, because I wanted past life and life between life in there. So I do talk about them and the value of them and some of the aspects of it. But I think that both past life and life between life is better facilitated by a therapist rather than trying to do it yourself. Right? So you may find remnants from past life doing the soul essence or the essential healing work. But I think past life and life between life is best experienced guided rather than self-guided. Yeah.
But with that, what do you think is this, what's the mechanic? What's this kind of process that with awake awareness in hypnotherapy, with a facilitator working with you, and you're the one there with eyes closed, and you remember this experience, don't know why and how and all that, but you feel that it happened. And then just by visiting it, and then coming back after the session, you realize, hey, it's no longer there. It's gone.
Yeah. Well, it integrates or resolve, dissipates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me,
the first ones I did by accident, that's what I didn't know how to facilitate it.
Yeah.
But it was resolved just because we visited it and released it. It wanted to come to the surface. Next question.
Thanks, Paul.
I think since we are on this, I have a question to ask Paul. Like, like your experience that you mentioned, that the spontaneous past life regression happened, and then the memory came out, and then the pain just went away. And that was also being reported by Dr. Brian Weiss' book as well. Like, just by recalling the memory, some of the body symptoms just disappear. While we are doing a regression therapy for the clients, we tends to follow like what you mentioned about the recovering the emotions, and then discovering their beliefs, and then after that look into their current survival strategy, and then allow that part to learn it, all right, to see the belief from a different perspective, or to form a new belief. Then after that, so that they don't have to go through the survival strategy again. So in your opinion, so which one is, do we still, I mean, normally we do this, right? But sometimes we realize that sometimes this is not required for them to heal. So What is your opinion in this?
I think that the eye-opener for me, having practiced hypnotherapy for years before past life or between life or essential healing, the eye-opener was that, oh, it's not always just carried in the psyche. It's not always just carried in the subconscious mind, but that it's carried in the soul as well. And so for me, that made regression to beyond childhood all the more important, because up until birth, there's a lot of trauma or experiences that are related to what you're talking about. But especially when something can't be resolved that way by reframe or forgiveness or suggestion or something else, that indication for me was it started sooner. So it's when things start pre-verbal or pre-birth, right, that you need to look back further. And so the in utero, and Billy must have talked about this in his talk about womb regression, is that so much is being formed there, but it's also the first place you have to look at soul memory, soul experience, soul quality, not quality, but qualities of the soul. And is the soul coming in with certain hard beliefs and survival strategies, right? So I would say, I often get patients coming that have been in psychoanalysis for many, many years, got close to something but couldn't resolve it. And the problem was, it was because it was pre-verbal or pre-birth. And the psychologist or psychotherapist didn't know to look earlier. Some do, but many don't. So I think it's a missing part of psychotherapy, really. And so look back earlier, look into past life, and understand that, number one, we have a soul, we have a consciousness that lives many times. And number two, the soul, when it goes back home, when it returns to spirit, it doesn't clear up everything. Some is cleared, right? It goes through life review, it gets rejuvenation and healing, it studies more. But the fact is, souls incarnate in order to grow. I used to think the soul was perfect, and it is not. There is something perfect in the soul, I believe, but the soul is imperfect, and there are things that it has come to believe, and emotions that it carries that are causing harm. And it's hoping to resolve those in the life. And so I think going back to the origins of them can make it very helpful in resolving them.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
So let's move on to the next question. This question is from Sharon. Sharon said, "Hi, Paul. Could you share more on the oneness you mentioned? The oneness is from the perspective of your feeling or consciousness or something more than that?"
Yeah, I wish, Sharon, that I could just hold my hands up and give or help everyone have that experience of oneness, because I know I longed for it, and I couldn't even have told you that that's what I longed for. Something I wanted, but I didn't even know that's what it was. It's a very hard thing to explain, because I had a sense of my own consciousness, but I had no sense of any separateness from anything. So I could be me, what I perceive as me, although it was much less of any kind of personality me, but a sense of self. But at the same time, I was a drop of water on a mailbox at someone else's house, right? That's how one I was with all things. And you can think in terms of energy, maybe, that it can't be destroyed. It's just in a different form, in a different place. And it's all us. It's the feeling of being the cosmos and greater, all at the same time, and still being aware, but not separate at all. And somehow it was more than, like, you and I are connected as we talk, but it was more than being connected. It was being you, being Anita, being Billy, being Shirley's. Not so much the personality, but it's almost like vibrational is the best way I could explain it. Our language is not described for this. Good question.
In another word, are you saying that you become aware as the other person? It's
That
like
too.
you become
Absolutely.
aware as the water drop on the mailbox. You become aware as. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, it's not like I could have said what Sharon was thinking, although I suppose that's possible. Excuse me. In my own experience, it was more just feeling energetically is all. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, Billy is asking if you can sketch for everyone here the training pathway from learning to practice hypnotherapy to past life exploration to experience life between lives. What should one expect it takes in time and attention?
Say it again.
Billy, why don't you do it, Aurand?
I just want to be sure to give everyone a chance. I don't want to give more questions.
So Paul, what I'm bringing up was like every one of us who comes into hypnotherapy, who has come into hypnotherapy, we've had our pathway. We might have had some college training, some practical training, but once you really get into using or to practicing the art of hypnosis with a client, there's a pathway, and obviously we're motivated to go to the best and the highest. So hypnosis is the first thing to learn, applying it into hypnotherapy. And then obviously you're looking at not just these memories along the timeline of this life, but oh, there's stuff that's happened before. And oh my gosh, well, all these lifetimes ahead of time, including this one, you know, there's a connection with soul. So learning that and observing that, but then also being the facilitator to do that with others. So there's a pathway, and everybody's different. Everybody's got their different needs and experiences and things that they need to be trained in. But if we could just talk about, I know you're giving the first step in September, and the second step, the first step being hypnotherapy, second step being past life exploration training, so people can do that. And then the Asian group is going to be doing their Life Between Lives training in December. So what does it take in terms of the time to do this?
Yeah, okay.
And
Okay.
attention.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're all different trainings. I think that the Alliance training, the ones that are connected with the Michael Newton Institute, I think are the best because it has the methodology that prepares someone to go on and do that work. So it's about a 2-year process. Take a hypnotherapy training, get some practice, take a regression therapy training, get some practice. Really, I think when I took the Newton Institute LBL training, I wished that I had more regression therapy experience than I had. I feel I was a bit green. And so really get as much past life and regression experience as possible. And then that LBL training. Yeah, it's about 2.5-year process, really. And I think that's good because it lets you season and get experience, but get a good training. I mean, there are some hypnotherapy is not really regulated in most countries, and there are some 2-day trainings out there. My first training was 2 days. And my confidence level was, I was certain I wasn't hypnotized, and I was pretty certain the person I tried to hypnotize wasn't. All right, that's why I run a different training with a lot of practice. So my trainings are lecture, demonstration of the methodology, and then supervised practice. I think that's a good rhythm. I think Meng trains that way too. Yeah. Then people leave there with really good tools. I learned suggestion-based therapy in the beginning. It's a starting point, but it's just the very beginning. So first training, I include parts therapy, so they learn interactive work and non-leading questions, right? Learn how to deal with trauma when stuff comes up, because stuff will come up. And then begin with regression and get experience with that. It's a powerful tool. And the problem with it is that the suggestion-based sessions, you can script them, you can write it down and read it. Well, some schools have you do that month after month, read this script, read that script. For me, that's a disservice. I really scripts. I started my trainings with no scripts and realized, okay, that was too big of a leap for students. So there are scripts in the manuals, but it's a starting point. You can't script regression therapy or parts therapy. You can, if you understand the elements, you can put them together. I think something I find myself saying to most students is that there's no one right way to do it. There are many paths to the same place, and you'll often change course as you're going. I think that's something as a regression therapist you need to be comfortable with. You'll try here, no, okay, you try here, no, okay, oh, here we go, right? Even switching back and forth between parts therapy and regression therapy, some kind of gestalt, even occasionally appealing to the mental mind to get a piece you don't know and then continuing. It's really an art, and it's not scriptable. And that takes courage. I mean, I flew by the seat of my pants. Most of what I teach in my trainings, I learned from working with clients, really. It wasn't from the books I read or the courses I took.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question, Billy.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question. Anyone? Okay, the moment I finish my sentence, the question just came in. Okay, it's from Zainab.
Zainab,
Yeah?
nice to see
Yep.
you.
Okay.
Turkey.
Yeah, she said, did you have any difficulty with seeing other people behaving bad or even cruel after feeling the oneness? Maybe everyone has a path and all is leading to the source eventually, but I know I'm not there yet to accept all.
I think that, yeah, that's a tough question. I think that once we experience unconditional love, once we experience oneness, when we know we're part of all things, we realize that judgment and I'm better than, you're less than, which is a big dynamic in the world. Look what's happening in the world now with division, right? Within families, within cultures, within nations. There's this huge movement, right? And so I think that when I experienced becoming one, I felt whole again. And then they had me experience coming out of the oneness and how painful that is and how connected with judgment that is, right? Judgment of self, judgment of others, especially from and so, yes, some souls come to Earth to perform a very difficult role as a kind of perpetrator, to make trouble, to make us think, right? That's true. But I think that having the experience of makes it much more difficult for us to cause harm because we realize we're causing it to ourselves, that we're all one anyway. It's hard to see yourself as better than someone else when you experience that oneness and unconditional love. Yeah. Can I practice that perfectly in my day-to-day life? Not always. You know, when I wanted to get on the train yesterday and that person cut in front of me like I wasn't there, my human nature was like, you know, was I unconditionally loving? But I did catch myself and say, okay, just, you know, yeah. Thanks. Good to see you, by the way.
Okay, I think that
Zainab just got certified in hypnotherapy.
I see.
She doesn't know it yet. She didn't receive her acceptance letter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Public announcement. Yeah.
Okay.
Mang, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All together.
All right. So so now we've moved on to the next session of tonight. Okay. I'll just share this up. Okay.
I stopped sharing my.
Yep. Okay. So now we move on to the presentation of certificates. Okay. So I'm going to spotlight our handsome Dr. Teo on the screen. Okay. All right. So now this portion is we're going to invite Dr. Teo to present the certificate of appreciation to Paul for his wonderful talk tonight. I personally have learned a lot, and I really like tonight's talk. So yeah, Dr. Teo, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul, for your very enlightening talk. that you share with
Thank you.
all of us. It's really difficult for us to get a good speaker over here to speak to us. And I'm glad that you have find some time for us, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much, Paul.
Anytime. Glad to do it for you. And I'd much rather have you hand this to me in person as soon as possible.
I will hand it over to you virtually first.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Now, I have one more thing to share with everyone. Okay. Now, after tonight, there's an upcoming talk, okay, by Su Fei from mainland China. Okay, and Su Fei is going to talk about aromatherapy, the combinations of aromatherapy and hypnotherapy. So she's a IFA certified aromatherapist. She's also a therapist from Aroma Genera, and she's also LBL practitioner from Michael Newton Institute as well. So, and her talk is going to happen on the 9th of October, 2021. And so if you're interested, you can get registered and then enjoy her talk. Okay. So with that, that is the end of our session tonight. And once again, we'd like to thank Paul very much for his time and also for this wonderful talk tonight. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
and
so
we'll be playing a short video on Sufi.
okay.
Right.
So Ellen, right?
Ellie.
Okay, Ellie, go ahead, Ellie. While Ellie is preparing, Paul, how can we get your book?
In Malaysia, Kinokuniya has it. Yeah, that's a good online bookstore, Kinokuniya. Amazon has it. If you
is your book available on Book Depository?
Yep.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's even in bookstores. The two that are left in the world. Yeah, and if you write to me at paulaurand.com, all my courses and information are there.
I see. Okay.
Any problem with that, Ellie?
Yeah, I couldn't play it. I think I have to share.
Yeah, go ahead.
You gotta share screen. After you play, then you share screen there.
Oh, Anita mentioned that, Paul, you have audiobook as well?
Yeah, it's an Audible.
Okay.
And the practices and the audiobook are my voice. So there's a professional reader that reads the book, but the practices are in my voice.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, Ellie, you can play now.
I don't think I can make it. Sorry.
Okay.
I think
it's all right. It's all right.
It's all right.
If that's the case, then we'll call it a night. And thanks, Paul, for spending this time with us, and Billy and the rest of everyone.
Okay. All right.
Bye, everybody.
So, bye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Good morning and good night.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Oh, we have a very big turnout today. Maximum is 53 person. 53.
Fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, and it's from all over the world.
Isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
We have Luxembourg, and also from Middle East, Korea.
Yeah.
Lots of people.
Beautiful. Well, we'll do it again
Yeah.
down the road. I know you have other speakers. But... Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.